it. So. Okay, can everyone put on your headphones and see if it works? You're not going to be able to hear without it because of all the noise. Margaret, can you hear me? Everyone? Okay, good morning. Welcome to day number 5, 6. We're getting to that period where one day runs into the other.
Exactly.
Welcome to the home of sustainable agriculture of the Americas. This is the pavilion by IICA and its member states, and it's sponsored by a whole group of partners from across the Americas. Today is Science Day, and Science Day is important to us. We were founded 82 years ago as the Inter-American Institute for Science on Agriculture. Now we're Cooperation on Agriculture, but science is part of our DNA, and it's very important to think about science and innovation and how that will help us achieve the goals that we have to feeding 10 billion people by 2050 and also taking care of our planet. And we can do it with innovation, but we need partners and we need research, we need investigation, we need policy to help all of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle Nierenberg for the, what's today, Saturday, the Saturday coffee chat. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here on Saturday. Again, I'm Danny Nierenberg. I am president and co-founder of Food Tank. Food Tank is a research and advocacy organization really devoted to highlighting stories of hope and success in food and agriculture systems. And, you know, as Lloyd said, I think science-based solutions and science-based evidence will be more important than ever before, given our current political climate, especially in North America. But I'm really excited about this panel. And I just want to say how delighted Food Tank has been to partner with IICA, especially Margaret and all of her colleagues who've done such great work to organize these breakfast dialogues and make sure that people are coming together around food and around action. So I want to introduce our 3 amazing panelists. We have Carol Franco, who is the Senior Research Associate in the Department of Forest Resources and Environmental Conservation at Virginia Tech. She's also the Agricultural Negotiator for the Dominican Republic and an advisor for nature-based solutions to the government of the DR. Thank you for being here. Please give her a round of applause. Next is Katia Fajardo, IICA team leader for the Climate Change Program. Katia, round of applause for her, please. And we have Lori Goodwin, the vice president at CorpLife International. Please give her a round of applause. So, Carol and Katia, if I can start with you both, can you talk about sort of the process of considering food and agriculture in climate negotiations? What does that look like? Because several years ago, we weren't even talking about food and agriculture as a solution to the climate crisis. Do you want to go first?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and it's an honor to be invited to this panel. So it took us a while to get into agriculture, as you said, and we started all with science. So we started with workshops. It was all SABSTA. And it was workshops, and there was not until until the COP in Fiji that was born, which is 2017, that we finally were able to get the Coronivia joint work on agriculture. And that Coronivia joint work on agriculture is when we finally had like a big start, I would say, in food and food security and agriculture in the negotiations. And then again in 2022, we had our Sharm el-Sheikh joint work on climate action for agriculture and food security. So it was, I would say, with Coronivia that we really started that SBI SABSTA together for implementation. And it was science, but it was also implementation. Since then, we've been trying to really put agriculture and food security pretty high in the negotiations. Right. And it has taken us a bit of time. It's not an easy topic. And if you think about it, after REDD+, which I used to follow, REDD+, reduction of emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, agriculture is sectorial. And it's the only one that we still have that is, we are dealing with a sector, which is why it's so difficult, because all countries, each country, it's very jealous of their agriculture sector.
Sure. Thank you. Katia?
Thank you, and thank you, Carol, for explaining. Well, welcome to this pavilion. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. And for IICA, the topic started, I can say, like 12 years ago, when we tried to understand better what was happening with agriculture in the negotiations. Because at that moment, the only contact point of agriculture was for fools. So, yeah, and this is not enough for sure. So, and also we started at that moment working with countries to understand, I mean, who was working, who is able to participate, because as Carol said, this is, topic is, well, it's a tough topic, and you need to understand not only the agricultural sector, the whole war of negotiations.
Right, right.
And you know, and in some of the agriculture, well, people is not ready to be here in order to understand that, and also to have the internal communication with the counterparts in the country, because you need to work closely with the environmental authorities and the others. So that's why that's how we start.
Thank you. And I want to get back to that collaboration point in a minute, but I want to ask about Coronivia, because that process sort of broke down over the last 2 years, right? Could you explain what could we have done to make sure that Coronivia was sort of uplifted more?
I think I would disagree. Coronivia was a success because what we needed to do was precisely implement the workshops, and we did it. So remember, it's steps. In the negotiation, all you have is steps. It took 10 years for us to get Red Plus at the end.
Okay.
So it is a very slow process, and that's why it's so difficult to explain. That it's not, it won't happen in a heartbeat. It won't happen in 2 or 3 negotiations. So Coronivia was a success because Coronivia allowed us to get the Sharm el-Sheikh joint work right now. And now we are working on, we have a roadmap. And remember, it's Substan SBI, so we still need the science, and the science is extremely important. That's why the workshops and also the lessons learned for the countries. But then on the other side, you have the portal, which I'm very happy to say that yesterday we had text. It took us a week, but we finished that text, and we're very proud because we're never some of the first to close an agenda, and we did it. We're like,
Yay.
Yes, we had text.
That's great. That's great.
So we did an amazing job on that one, and we're very proud of that. So we have all the feedback for the portal, and we're going to be able to use the portal. And I just want to take this opportunity to say how much IICA has helped us during Coronivia and during the joint work, with the meetings, with making sure we are together. And one of the reasons we were so good at Sharm el-Sheikh when we changed from Coronivia to Sharm el-Sheikh, was because IICA had all these meetings where Latin America and Caribbean got together as countries, and we were able to prepare texts. And even though we were not and are not a formal group of negotiation, we are coming to the negotiations as a formal group, and everybody wants to meet with us as LAC. So that was really amazing for us.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. That gives me a lot of hope and a lot of sort of positive energy. Katia, can you talk about the collaboration and why that's so necessary with the agricultural negotiators of the Americas? Like, how are they responding to that collaboration?
Well, first, well, as you know, IICA has office in every country, and that is very important because we know who is in the agriculture sector, our partners, and in some of those cases, we start working with them, sometimes at national level, and after we start with these regional workshops that Carol was mentioned, and this we make in the last 3 years we make 5 different regional workshops, and that's something that we are still working, and the next year we're going to continue with that. And the good of that is that the people can be there not with an official position. They go there and they just exchange and learn, and sometimes we bring people from not only from the region, also from outside. We have been for example, webinars with some of the African counterparts to understand also their position, because they are very well organized. And the idea here is just to have the opportunity to learn, and also don't lose that experience and knowledge. For example, Carol have been there for a long time, but that is not the usual thing in the sector.
Right. Carol, just one more question for you. I'm sorry. The negotiation process is so intends, right? And so that collaboration, if that's not happening with IICA and other organizations, what would it would look very different, wouldn't it?
Yes, totally. And that's why it was so important for Coronivia, because at the beginning, each country was coming up with their own ideas, their own workshops. So at the end, you go into a room, and we do have in agriculture a G77 position, which is great. It's very strong. As you know, G77 is the strongest group, the biggest group, 134 countries. And includes the AGN, LDC, Zanga, Arab group. So we are very united as G77. But also you need to negotiate as G77. And it takes us sometimes more time to negotiate within G77 than outside G77. So when we were there, we were alone as a different countries. And when we started working with IICA, and IICA started supporting our meetings and saw, they thought, this might be important. What do you think? And we're like, oh yeah, we need that. We were able to come up with common positions. So you have Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, Chile, Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Belize. So you have all that, Panama. You have all that core of countries getting together, Costa Rica, getting together and putting positions together about what are the workshops that we want. What is this happening? And that's why when I told you, for me, Coronivia was a success, because it really got us together. It really told us, okay, you did the workshops, you did the work. What is next?
Sure.
But we needed to go through steps.
Yeah.
But that collaboration is what allowed Latin American Caribbean countries to have a very strong voice in G77 and outside G77.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it. Lori, I'd love to bring you into the conversation. Lloyd mentioned that it was Science Day, and I'm wondering from your perspective at CropLife, what do you see as the most exciting innovations right now in plant science?
So I think there's many. I also think there's opportunities as well around just new systems approaches, and I think that's something that we're seeing a lot more here. So it's not about one particular technology or another. It's about how do all these things work together and open up new tools and new opportunities for farmers to help implement some of the what's negotiated outcomes from here. You mentioned the whole of government approach, and I think that's also what it takes to create that enabling environment for science and for innovation. Getting back to some of these opportunities that have been lost over the years with knowledge exchange and funding basic research as well at the country level. So I think it's an exciting time. We have new technologies like gene editing that are opening up a wide world for lots of different crops as well. So it's exciting to see. It's a good time, but we have to have that policy enabling environment as well to make sure that that continues.
Absolutely. When we're talking about diversity and biodiversity, so diversity of crops and biodiversity in general, how do you think of the sort of the future of science and agriculture? How can they help protect both the diversity of crops and the biodiversity that helps support ecosystems?
That's a great question. I was in Cali for COP29 a few weeks ago, and obviously that's the much discussed there. I think that having this implementation piece, right? So we're moving a bit past the negotiations. We have outcomes in both of here and with CBD, and that implementation piece. And so I think technology and the role of technology science is getting maybe even more to the forefront, so that we are opening up new tools, et cetera. But I think right now the conversation is evolving a little bit to not be an either or, right? So you can't. It's not just about food security. Also the environmental outcomes are important. And I do think through technology and adopting technology and new innovations, we have the opportunity to do both.
So there are these cascading crises that are happening, right? Biodiversity loss crisis, the climate crisis, obviously, why we're all here. Public health crisis. Do you think that there's an opportunity, you've talked about innovation and technology, to sort of combine, the things that CropLife is, known for with the knowledge of farmers, sort of this idea of combining high and low tech so that they can come together?
Yeah, absolutely. In knowledge exchange, we get the opportunity to work with, World Farmers Organization, who's here on the ground, and seeing the presence of voices. WFO was also at the COP16 in Cali, and I think it's so important because we're talking about implementation. All of these, whether these negotiated in Cali or here, they come down to land, right, and the land level, and farmers as stewards of the land. And so how did we make sure their voices are heard so that whatever we're discussing in rooms here is implementable in the field and actually achieving the outcomes that everybody wants?
Yeah, I've been hearing this all week from a lot of folks that we and it's not. I've been involved in food and agriculture for a long time, so I've always thought this, but it's nice to hear other people say now that what we're doing should be farmer-centered. Are we farmer-centered enough, Carol and Katya, in the process of making the negotiations, of people really listening to farmers and what they need for their livelihoods to be preserved and enhanced and so that they can thrive?
Well, I think that is something new in these COPs. I mean, I remember, I don't know, 6 or 5 years ago, that there was just a few agricultures and farmers in these COPs. But now I just see like 10 or 12. But also for this COP29, the topic is very important because there is an initiative, a global initiative, Harmonia, that is presented by the presidency of the COP29, will be launched on next week. And of course, we are waiting to see what opportunities are there, for farmers. And for IICA, it's very important to understand that and to be part of this process, because next year we're going to have the COP30 in Brazil, as all of us know. And of course, farmers are going to be very important, not only for the region, also for the country. Because remember that for Brazil, farmers are in the first line, and also in this Lula government. We have the Ministry Teixeira a few days ago in this panel, and he was also talking about that. So we are going to be close of that and see if there are more opportunities for farmers.
Great. Carol?
Yes, I agree with Katya. More and more in the negotiations, in the rooms, the farmers come up all the time. Is how are farmers going to be using this? It's exactly what Lori was saying. How do we translate everything that's happening here in the countries, and how do we translate it to the farmers so they know, okay, this is what's available. This is why it was very important for us when we finished the text for the portal. Many people were like, why? It's a portal, and I'm like, it's extremely important because that's where we're going to be able to put all the projects, initiatives, and policies that we have, and we're going to be able to get collaboration, and that collaboration is technological transfer, is funding, is capacity building. What do we need in order to be able to implement these initiatives? And the whole idea is also that we are able to get all this support for the farmers. Not only that, in the diagram that we have precisely for that portal, there is going to be a tab that says, yes, observers or observer organizations, but also it's going to be farmers there, separated. Like
That's fantastic.
Farmers. So they can also make their own submissions. So it's under the, of course, UNFCCC Secretariat rules of how you do the website and all that, which is normal. But yes, so farmers have become up front and center of our negotiations, and we're always thinking about that. And another thing is the workshops for Sharm el-Sheikh are going to be in hybrid format, precisely so we can get for the farmer associations that want to log in and see what's happening in the workshops, they're going to be able to have access to this.
That's very new. That's very different. Can we give that a round of applause? That's fantastic news. Thank you for explaining all that. So, Lori, when we're talking about putting farmers front and center, and we're talking about diversification, I wonder how you and CropLife look at sort of helping farmers move away from monocultures and helping them. Is there a way that you can help farmers co-create and co-collaborate with organizations and institutions like yours to move away from monocultures so that we can have the diversification that we need?
So I think our goal is to provide options and tools, right? So once again, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for any of these challenges that you listed, whether that's climate or biodiversity. And so I do think there's lots of opportunities for everything to work together in a holistic way. And so I think that, what's right in Africa is not necessarily what's right in Asia. So really listening to farmers about what they need. I think oftentimes we make a lot of assumptions.
Right.
And, that's where we try to elevate, the opportunities. How can we work together with groups like WFO to make sure their voices are heard and recognized? And, moving beyond just having policies put on people and having, like you're saying, co-creating the policies that are going to work locally. And I think that's really important. So we're out here, at a global event, these multilateral events, but how do you take it down to the national level so that it's right for that country and for that context?
This paradigm shift that I've seen throughout the years of sort of telling farmers what they need and want, and guys in suits and people in lab coats giving farmers things that they may or may not need. There's a whole sort of evolution of that now, where we're seeing like that co-creation, that co-collaboration, farmers really being involved from the very beginning. And I think that's so important when we're talking about science, because for me, farmers are the best scientists in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, any of our members really look to farmers to say, what is it that you need, right, in your particular context? And I know that everybody in the R&D world is doing that, whether you're a public sector or private sector, and really having the opportunity to have, advisory councils of farmers that are coming in to say, actually, it's not this, it's this that's really the big challenge on my farm. And so I think more of that is needed, as much as possible. And, thank you to IICA for creating a lot of those opportunities as well for government, private sector, farmers, for all of the people around the table to be having the same conversation.
Thank you so much. Carol, I want to take a step back and talk about farmers in the DR and how they're adapting to the climate crisis. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what you're hearing?
That's a very good question, because right now there is an assessment of the agro sector in Dominican Republic that has been done by the World Bank, precisely to try to see not only the climate part, but also the environmental impacts and also the economic impacts. We are suffering what a lot of our other countries are also suffering, a lot of natural disasters and extreme weather events. So there's a lot of droughts in some areas, but also there's a lot of flooding in others. And we've been suffering seeing that every year. At this point right now, there is a lot going on, and it's been done in order to provide capacity building, first of all, for the farmers as to what is this. But at the same time, they know. You go to a farmer and say, they might not tell you this is climate change, but they tell you, listen, it's raining when it's not supposed to.
Right.
And we're losing our crops. So they know exactly what's going on.
Sure.
So it's much more as to, okay, what are the options? How can we support this? What else can we do? Climate smart agriculture. What are the different techniques that we can use? For that, you also need capacity building. You need technological transfer. So we go back to that. Something very important, the agro sector is very important in our country, in Dominican Republic. So that's why it's part not only of our national adaptation plans, it's one of the sectors that we focus on our national adaptation plans, and it's going to be one of the sectors in our BTR under the chapter of adaptation. So agriculture will be there precisely because of what we've seen and how farmers are being impacted by especially the droughts and the flooding right now in Dominican Republic, which is, we had an episode a few years ago, we had a huge drought, and then we are coffee producers, best coffee in the world, sorry.
It is.
I know Costa Rica's not going to like me for that, but and we lost a lot of the production of coffee because a pest that was always there was able to take over because of the droughts, and then the plants were too weak to fight it. So we keep suffering this, and salinized soils and losing the crops. We have issues with rice, as you know, not only because of methane emissions, but also because our soils are getting salinized because of irrigation techniques that are not the best. So you go on and on and on. Climate change is not helping because it's basically exacerbating a lot of environmental issues, but at the same time creating new impacts on them.
And just address briefly, as an island nation, the island of the DR and Haiti face sort of special extremes, right? Because they are an island nation.
Yes. So we are an island nation, and we are on the path of the hurricanes too. So it's a very interesting mechanism, and it's very difficult for us. Again, we are suffering sea level rising, and our aquifers are very close to the coast, of course. So that's happening a lot. We're losing a lot of the crops for adaptation. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech and at Harvard, and one of the pictures I show to my students when I'm talking about adaptation is coconut trees with water at the beach. So they were there before, and because of sea level rising and storm surge, now they're dying, and you have water right there on the coconut trees. So it's just, we can see that, and we do have a production of coconuts in the Dominican Republic. So that's another crop that is used. So it's been impacting a lot, and because of we are a small island state, it's for us is very difficult because there's, and a very small one, by the way, there's no place to run.
Right,
So we're
right.
suffering the impacts in the mountains, in the coastal areas, and there's no place to run.
There is no place to run when you're a small island nation. I guess that brings me to the question. This is for all of you. And Carol, you brought up this before. How can we make access to resources for farmers more available? You mentioned the portal, like I said, but what other resources can we make available to farmers so that they do have somewhere to run, that they create the resilience on their own land so that they don't become environmental refugees? Lori, do you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. I think there's a lot of initiatives that are out there as well, and I think some of it is just elevating the visibility of those resources that exist. I think funding basic research as well. Country reinvesting in public research is important, and then having the same conversation. I get to participate in a lot of these multilateral forums, and like I said, having everybody around the table and understanding what the farmers need is really, really important, and what policy would support them in implementing some of these changes to address climate change. I think, like I said, that assuming is always challenging, and that whole of government approach that I've heard brought up more and more is also very encouraging. So
It is very encouraging. Katya.
Well, I think, for example, exactly, first bring the right information to them, to the farmers, and because sometimes there are many things happen and they don't have the whole information. Sometimes it's too far, sometimes it's in another language, sometimes there are other stakeholders that have the information in the country and also at the local level. But also, to understand things like happen here. For example, this new fund for loss and damage.
Right.
Okay, that's something that I think agriculture have to be a place there. I mean, and there we have many things to say about the reality of the countries. But in which way we can communicate with it? Sometimes maybe a local government or even a country don't have that opportunity, but we can bring all the 34 countries that we are working with and bring that message. So I think things like that, to put the information simple, clear, and available for all of them.
And having that sort of unified message among countries and farmers, I think, is also very important.
Yes, we are here because we are the Climate Action Program, but we have the other six programs in IICA, and we start with them, sometimes because they also have a lot of activities, workshops, things like that, and we have a minister meetings every 2 years. So that is also a good opportunity to bring that kind of message. For example, for COP30, if we can put all the ministers together and bring a very strong message, of course we are going to have hopefully an opportunity to talk with these board members or other authorities.
I certainly hope so. Carol, you mentioned the work with young people at Harvard and Virginia Tech, and you led a group of students on a trip to COP28 last year. Can you talk about what that looked like for them?
Yes. Before I answer that, I want to get into the funding too.
Of course.
Because it's extremely important, and there are two things. Yes, we need visibility and accessibility to these funds. The portal is not going to be only to like a match place, but also it's going to have links to the Capacity Building Fund, the Green Climate Fund. We have the GEF. So there are a lot of funds out there, but you need to know how to access them. Also, to access them, sometimes you have to fill out these forms that are huge and inefficient, and many countries don't even know how. So we need to try to make sure whatever is out there, we can access it, we can explain how it works. If it is the national level, many of these, the country applies for it. Well, how do we make sure the country applies for it? But that's one level. The other level that we're suffering in funding is that more and more Latin American countries cannot come to the negotiations because of lack of funding. And IICA knows that very well, because they have supported us to come here.
Right.
And if we're not here, we cannot be fighting in the forefront for our countries to have what we need.
Yeah, you always have to have a seat at the table.
So that's happening, and that's something we need to elevate agriculture, because everybody's talking about agriculture is so important. Well, then do something about it.
Yeah.
Because it is important.
Right on.
Food security. So do something, because we're trying our best. So we need that support. We need to make sure it's right there on the top of the list. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's important.
Thank you.
The students, I've been taking students to the COP since 2017.
Nice.
And I started with both undergrads and grads from Virginia Tech. This year I added Harvard students. And the whole idea was to experience firsthand high-level policymaking. What are we doing here? A lot of people criticize us because we spend a lot of time and sometimes we don't get decisions. Well, 196 countries deciding is a bit difficult to get to one result or decision.
Right.
So they come, these are students from the US, and their lives change. Many of them then decide they want to do climate change. Many of them do a master's on climate change. They change their majors. So they come here, and it's just an amazing experience. The other thing that I've been doing is in my class, I have a mock negotiation.
Oh, nice.
And I prepare them for that. And we've been negotiating agriculture. So for me, it's very interesting to explain to them the different countries, because I know them all, and how they behave and how they do this. And they learn what's happening in the agriculture negotiation by heart, because they need to learn all the submissions. They need to prepare for the roles. And for them all of them has said, life-changing experience, and they keep coming. So I have students that have come twice already.
I want to take that class. Yeah. That's awesome. This is a question for all of you. So much of what you all have to do is storytelling and creating awareness and educating people about these issues. How do you do that along with all the other jobs that you have? Because there's a lot on your plates right now. How do you create that storytelling sort of option? Lori, do you want to go first?
I was hoping not to go first. I think it just becomes inherently part of what you do, right? So it's not you're doing that and then you're doing this. I think it has to become part of what you do. I love the idea of, taking students and of being here and understanding. I mean, a lot of us learn by doing, right? So if they're not here, you don't understand the complexity of these negotiations. You don't understand why it matters.
Right.
And so that's the other reason I'm glad to see so many stakeholder groups here, because, it's hard to explain in a very clean way, I'm sure, to a farmer in Dominican Republic why you need to be here at the table, right? So seeing it firsthand and being a part of the process, I think that's, one of the ways. And so just sharing the information that comes out of here becomes part of your day job, I guess.
Sure, great. Katya?
Well, I think in two different ways. One is first to learn how to catch up the ideas from the farmers, to listen then, to try to understand better all the needs, the concerns that they have. And also, we need to be always ready to all the information prepared, reading a lot. And when we have that clear,
right,
I think we can start working in a proposal and things like that, working closely with some of the partners. Sometimes it's a national level or a local level. And also to understand who is doing what, because all of us have different roles. And sometimes if we just doing that, we can get add some value to our actions. And for IICA, well, the good things is like IICA is a strong organization. We have different departments. For example, we are always making videos, courses, things like that, and also concept notes, things like that, clearly. And for us, that's also the idea to be here,
right,
because we have the other side, not only the things that are happening in the country, in the national level. Yeah, doing that.
And I think IICA is so good at amplifying what farmers are already doing, what the stakeholders on the ground are already doing, and that's so important. Carol?
I guess it's like Lori was saying, it's part of what you do every day, and also it's your way of communicating to others what do we do and why it's so important. So just talking to people, we are called workaholics just because we're always talking about what we do with others, because it's not a job, it's part of our lives, and that's what it is. It's not a job. It's not that we are being paid to say or talk in front of people. It's so incorporated into our daily lives that every time we get together, everybody's like, "Can you guys not talk about this again?" and it just comes out like, I don't know how to not talk about it. And I can't. It's just because it's part of me.
Yeah.
It's part of what we do. And for us, it's very important to talk about, because sometimes you find a person who's like, really, that's happening? That's great. So we can do this. And then you get all excited. So it's just part of you. We need to talk about this. We need to share the information we have. And that's very important. We learn, we share, and you don't know whose life you're changing by providing
Absolutely.
this information.
That sharing component is so much of what you all do, and it's so important to solving these issues. I'm wondering what you hope comes out of this COP. Carol, what's your biggest hope?
So my biggest hope was that we finished and we had a text, and we did. So,
Yay! Congratulations.
so that was very important. But besides that, we are also working with a new collective finance goal, right? Quantifiable goal for finance, climate finance. And I think we are really hoping that we can increase that goal.
Yeah.
And of course, for me, the most important part, coming from a small island development state and from Dominican Republic, where the priority constitutionally is adaptation, is make sure that adaptation has a say, and make sure that more and more we continue to receive resources for adaptation, because we put adaptation in the back burner for a long time.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to catch up. And for me, it's besides what we were able to achieve under agriculture here, it's been able to see how we continue to provide adaptation with that space and those resources.
Thank you for that, Katia.
For IICA, well, for us and for the program, I think the most important thing is to see that the agricultural is moving, all the sector and the negotiations, as Carol say, and well, having that clear, also see if the new people who is participating in the negotiation and also in the events, if they are enough enthusiastic as Carol to keep working in the agriculture.
No one's as enthusiastic as Carol.
Exactly. And because this is our job. I mean, understand, listen to see who is working, and to bring new stakeholders at the private sector and others, which are also very important in this equation. So this is and I think things are working because agricultural is moving. Sometimes it's not the way that people can get an agreement.
Sure.
And this year is very good to see that, and we are very happy.
Thank you, Lori.
For me, I think it's about implementation, so moving beyond just the negotiations, and we're talking about how we've seen some really good developments with last year in Dubai with the UAE declaration, and so hearing from countries how they're going to implement some of these commitments that they've made, and I think making sure that agriculture is in the room as well as these things are discussed. I think a lot of times people talk about agriculture and there might not be somebody in the room.
Right.
So I that's what I hope to see, is more of that. So more implementation, and also making sure that agriculture is in the room to have those discussions.
Absolutely. One final question. You can all answer it sort of concisely if you can. For folks who didn't come to COP29 but are going to COP30, what's your advice to them about how to sort of make sure that agriculture is at the table, that everything is farmer-centric?
I think it's going to inherently be farmer-centric with Brazil being the host country. So I think I don't think that'll be an issue. I think agriculture will definitely be front and center. Once again, it's going to be making sure that things are heading in the direction of implementation, I think, and not just simply, additional negotiations, which I'm sure everybody wants to see closed eventually, and moving towards implementing these decisions.
I think we need to take the opportunities before COP30. For example, the countries has to send a submission for the next at the beginning of the year. So who is doing that, and we can in which way we can support them, and also prepare the road to COP30. Not big, because remember we also have in the middle of the year next in the next year the SOPSTA. So I think that many things will happen there.
Right.
So we need to prepare, and also to support the countries again to be there.
keep that momentum going for sure.
Exactly. Not only the COP30, because many things are happening before.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think it would be great, and precisely to put agriculture really up there and farmers, that as soon as the portal is basically alive, but as soon as countries start submitting projects and or uploading, in this case, projects and initiatives, especially the ones that are looking for any type of collaboration or support. If we get some of these projects or initiative finance or with capacity building, whatever the countries need for COP30, that is a great success, because you're going to say, portal works. Countries are putting their projects there, their initiatives, and they are matching. There are other countries that are coming and matching that and say, I have the support for you. I can help you with this initiative. And we're going to be able to track which projects have been able to get funding or capacity building. We will also have a tab that will be for collaborations and opportunities.
Nice.
So there can be collaboration and opportunities between and among countries. So seeing that the portal is a success will allow us for having agriculture over here, like really, really top in the list, and say it's working. So all this work we did, even though we got stuck for a year and a half to make things move, was worth it, because the portal is working and countries are putting information and countries are getting what they need in order to implement the decision, because that's the point. The idea is to implement the decision and all the information that we have translated into these initiatives and projects. So then we're going to say, okay, implementation is happening.
I love this. I've heard a lot about collaboration. I've heard a lot about implementation. I think these things are key for moving forward. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all so much.